Billionaire pretends to be poor to test his family, but what his wife did will make you cry. How would a billionaire's family react if he suddenly lost everything? When tech mogul Nathaniel Pierce fakes bankruptcy to test their loyalty, his children's betrayal is predictable, but the truly shocking twist lies in the quiet, unexpected actions of his wife, Clara, a testament to love that will leave you speechless and teary-eyed. Subscribe, like, and listen now to uncover the stunning truth about what money can't buy. Nathaniel Pierce surveyed the glittering Austin skyline from his penthouse office atop the Pierce Enterprises Tower. The city was a testament to innovation, ambition, and the relentless march of technology, a landscape he had significantly shaped. As founder and CEO of one of the world's leading software and AI firms, his name was synonymous with visionary thinking and staggering wealth. His life was a carefully curated existence of private jets, sprawling estates, exclusive boardrooms, and philanthropic galas. He had, by any external measure, achieved the pinnacle of success. Yet, in recent years, a persistent unease had taken root, a subtle dissonance beneath the polished surface of his life. It wasn't about business. Pierce Enterprises was thriving, constantly pushing boundaries. It was closer to home. It was about his family, his wife of 22 years, Clara, and their two grown children, James, 25, and Sophie, 22. He loved them, of course he did. But lately, doubt had begun to fester, fueled by overheard whispers, casual remarks from supposed friends, and an unsettling observation of his family's relationship with the immense fortune he provided. James, ostensibly learning the ropes in the marketing department at Pierce Enterprises, treated his job as an inconvenience between European ski trips and acquiring the latest sports cars. His demands for increased allowances or seed money for dubious ventures were becoming more frequent, tinged with an air of entitlement that grated on Nathaniel. Sophie, fresh out of an expensive liberal arts college, floated through life attending charity luncheons, more for the social aspect than the charity, curating her online image and planning elaborate vacations with friends, all funded by the seemingly bottomless well of her father's bank account. Her conversations often revolved around brands, resorts, and the lifestyles of her equally privileged peers. Even Clara, the woman he had fallen in love with long before the billions materialized, seemed surrounded by a coterie of friends whose primary interest appeared to be the Pierce family's social standing and philanthropic budget. He saw the subtle pressure on her to maintain appearances, to host ever more lavish events, to donate extravagantly. Had the comfort and security he provided inadvertently eroded something more fundamental? Did they love him, Nathaniel, the man? Or did they love the lifestyle, the status, the provider? The thought was poison. Nathaniel himself had come from a comfortable, but not extravagant middle-class background. He'd built his empire through relentless work, strategic genius, and a healthy dose of luck. He remembered the early days, the struggle, the shared dreams with Clara in their small apartment when Pierce Enterprises was just a concept sketched on napkins. Was that woman, the one who believed in him when he had nothing, still there beneath the designer clothes and polite society smiles? Did his children see him as a father or as a walking, talking ATM? The final catalyst came during his lavish 50th birthday celebration. Amidst the champagne and accolades, he overheard a snippet of conversation between James and one of his friends. Something about making sure the old man keeps the taps open and laughing about his latest investment. Later, he saw Sophie complaining to her boyfriend about the model year of the convertible he'd gifted her. It wasn't just ingratitude. It felt like a fundamental disconnect, a valuation based purely on monetary worth. That night, unable to sleep, The idea began to form, audacious and drastic. A test. He needed to strip away the wealth, the safety net, the very foundation upon which their current lives were built, and see what remained. Who would stand by him if the empire crumbled? Who loved Nathaniel Pierce, the man stripped bare of his billions? It felt like a betrayal even to conceive it, especially towards Clara, but the gnawing uncertainty had become unbearable. He needed to know the truth, however painful. The plan required meticulous orchestration and absolute secrecy from all but his most trusted confidants. He met with Anna Sterling, his sharp, fiercely loyal general counsel for over 15 years. He laid out the scenario, a catastrophic but entirely fictitious, failed investment in a volatile overseas market, wiping out his personal fortune. Pierce Enterprises, held in complex trusts, would remain solvent for now, but his accessible wealth, the source of his family's lifestyle, would appear to vanish overnight. Anna listened, her expression carefully neutral, though her raised eyebrow betrayed her surprise. "Nathaniel, this is extreme," she stated calmly. "The potential fallout, legally and personally, could be significant. Are you certain? I need to know." "Anna," Nathaniel replied, his voice strained. "I need to know what's real." Reluctantly, Anna agreed, recognizing the deep personal need driving him. Together, they looped in Marcus Thorne, his equally discreet chief financial officer. They crafted a believable narrative, prepared falsified documents, arranged for the temporary freezing of personal accounts the family accessed, and initiated the highly visible sale of a few key luxury assets. His beloved vintage Bentley, a small yacht docked in the Mediterranean. They leaked carefully worded rumors of financial trouble through obscure financial blogs, enough to reach the ears of those who mattered in their social circle, creating an atmosphere of crisis. The final piece was the house. Years ago, feeling nostalgic for simpler times, Nathaniel had anonymously purchased a small, unassuming bungalow in a quiet, older neighborhood on the other side of Austin, a place whirled away from their gated estate. He'd kept it maintained, but sparsely furnished, a secret bolt hole he never actually used. Now, it would become the stage for his experiment. He rehearsed the announcement in his head, dread mixing with a strange sense of resolve. He was setting fire to his own carefully constructed world, hoping something genuine, something fireproof, would remain in the ashes. Nathaniel chose a Sunday evening to detonate the carefully constructed bomb beneath his family's gilded life. He gathered Clara, James, and Sophie in a cavernous living room of their mansion, a space usually filled with the low murmur of sophisticated gatherings or the echo of solitary footsteps. Tonight, the tension was palpable even before he spoke. He had been distant and preoccupied for days, fueling their anxiety. He stood before them, his face etched with practiced lines of worry and exhaustion. "There's no easy way to say this," he began, his voice low and grave. "There's been a catastrophic development with my personal investments. A deal went sour, dominoes fell. The bottom line is I've lost almost everything." Silence. Stunned, disbelieving silence. James stared, his mouth slightly agape. Sophie's perfectly made-up face crumpled, tears welling in her eyes. Clara put a hand to her chest, her expression one of shock, but also immediate concern for him. "Nathaniel? What happened? Are you all right? Financially?" "No, Clara, I'm not all right," he said, avoiding her searching gaze. "The liquid assets, the stocks, the properties tied to my personal name, they're gone or frozen by creditors. The company itself is protected by the trust structures, for now, but our personal life, it's going to change. Drastically. Change how?" James demanded, finding his voice, which quickly rose in pitch. What does that mean, Gone? Gone where? How could you let this happen? All that work, all that money. It means the mansion is mortgaged to the hilt. We can't sustain it. The cars, the staff, the club memberships. It's all over, Nathaniel stated baldly. We have to downsize. Immediately. All we have left, clear and free, is a small house I owned outright on the east side. The east side, Sophie wailed, tears streaming freely now. Dad, no. That's miles away. It's tiny. What about my car? My allowance? My trip to Italy next month? There is no allowance, Sophie, Nathaniel said, steeling himself against her distress. The car will have to be sold. The trip is canceled. We'll be lucky to afford groceries. The reality began to sink in, ugly and unwelcome. James paced the room like a caged animal. This is insane. There must be something you can do. Call your lawyers, your bankers. Fix it. There's nothing to fix, James, Nathaniel lied, the deception tasting bitter. It's gone. We have to face facts. We have to move. The following days were a blur of chaos and disbelief. Movers, arranged discreetly by Anna Sterling, arrived to pack essential belongings, leaving behind the expensive art, designer furniture, and symbols of their opulent life. James argued constantly, refusing to pack, blaming Nathaniel with increasing vitriol. Sophie wept, calling her friends and boyfriend, her voice laced with panic and shame. Clara, after her initial shock, moved through the process with a quiet, stunned efficiency. She packed practical items, clothes, linens, kitchen essentials, family photos, her face pale but composed. She asked few questions about the financial details, her focus seemingly on the logistics of the move and Nathaniel's well-being. The small bungalow was a shock to the system. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a tiny kitchen, and a living room barely large enough for the few pieces of furniture they brought. The contrast with the sprawling mansion was jarring, almost comical if it weren't so grim. The neighborhood was quiet, working class, filled with modest homes and pickup trucks, a world away from the manicured lawns and security gates they were used to. Nathaniel played his part. He donned old jeans and flannel shirts he hadn't worn in decades. He announced he'd found grueling, low-paying work at a plastics factory an hour's drive away. A cover story allowing him hours away from the house to manage the charade via burner phone and encrypted emails with Anna, and to simply escape the oppressive atmosphere of the bungalow. He'd return in the evenings, feigning bone-deep exhaustion, collapsing onto the worn sofa, bringing home a meager amount of cash he claimed was his pay. The fragile facade of family unity crumbled quickly under the strain. James lasted less than a week. After a furious argument with Nathaniel about the lack of internet speed, the indignity of potentially needing a real job, and the perceived injustice of it all, he exploded. I can't live like this. It's pathetic. You ruined everything. He stormed out, stuffing clothes into a designer duffel bag, ignoring Clara's pleas to reconsider. He didn't look back. Nathaniel heard later, through carefully monitored channels, that James was couch surfing with wealthy friends, painting himself as the victim of his father's incompetence. Sophie clung on longer, buoyed by her wealthy boyfriend, Mark, who visited occasionally, looking distinctly uncomfortable in the humble surroundings. She complained incessantly about the cramped space, the lack of amenities, the boredom. She spent hours on the phone, her voice dropping to whispers, likely complaining about her predicament. Finally, about 3 weeks after the move, she approached Nathaniel, her eyes red-rimmed but her voice coolly determined. "Dad," she began, twisting her hands, "Mark asked me to move in with him. His parents have that guest house. She trailed off, unable to meet his eye. "I'm sorry," she mumbled, though it sounded more like an excuse than an apology. I can't stand being poor. I'm not cut out for it." Nathaniel felt a sharp pang of disappointment, deeper than the one James's departure had caused. He had hoped for more from Sophie, but he simply nodded, his face an unreadable mask. "I understand, Sophie. You need to do what you feel is best for you." She hugged him awkwardly, a fleeting gesture, before packing her designer suitcases into Mark's waiting luxury SUV. As she drove away, Nathaniel watched from the small porch, the second pillar of his family crumbling under the weight of simulated poverty. Now, only Clara remained. He turned his attention fully to her, his heart heavy with a mixture of dread and a desperate, flickering hope. How long would she last? With James and Sophie gone, an unnerving quiet settled over the small bungalow, broken only by the hum of the old refrigerator and the distant sounds of the neighborhood. The space felt both emptier and strangely more intimate. Nathaniel continued his charade, leaving early each morning for his fictitious factory job, returning late, projecting weariness and stress. He watched Clara constantly, subtly, waiting for the complaints, the resentment, the inevitable suggestion that perhaps she, too, should seek refuge elsewhere. But never came. Clara, after a period of quiet adjustment, seemed to tap into a reservoir of strength and practicality Nathaniel hadn't seen in years, perhaps not since their earliest days together. She transformed the bare-bones house into a semblance of home. She hung their family photos, placed familiar objects on the sparse shelves, and even planted herbs in pots on the tiny front porch. She didn't mourn the lost luxuries. Instead, she focused on the present reality with a calm determination that astonished him. One afternoon, Nathaniel came home early, claiming the factory had sent workers home due to a machine breakdown. He found Clara sitting at the small kitchen table, surrounded by piles of fabric, carefully guiding thread through an old sewing machine he hadn't known she possessed. Beside her lay several elegant dresses and blouses, her own designer wardrobe. "What are you doing?" he asked, genuinely curious. Clara looked up, managing a small smile. "Remember Mrs. Henderson next door? She works at that consignment shop downtown. She said they take high-end labels. My old things. We don't need them now. This is better." She gestured to the sewing machine. "And I found this in storage. Used to make curtains for our first apartment, remember? I saw an ad online. A local theater group needs costume alterations. It won't be much, but it's something." Later that week, she presented him with a small stack of bills. $57, she announced, a hint of pride in her tired eyes. "From a consignment shop and my first sewing payment. Enough for groceries for a few days, maybe even a small treat." She placed the money carefully in a chipped ceramic jar on the counter, the designated household fund. Nathaniel was floored. She wasn't just coping. She was actively contributing, sacrificing her own symbols of status without a word of complaint, finding practical ways to manage their drastically reduced circumstances. He saw her hands, usually perfectly manicured, becoming calloused from sewing and housework. He noticed new lines of worry etched around her eyes, but her gaze, when it met his, held only affection and unwavering support. He watched her manage their meager budget with meticulous care, finding cheap cuts of meat, stretching meals, reminding him of the resourcefulness she'd shown when they were young and truly struggling. She mended the tears in his work clothes, her fingers moving with a long-forgotten skill. She never once blamed him for their situation, only offering quiet words of encouragement. "Don't worry, Nathaniel," she'd say softly when he slumped onto the sofa after his long day. "We'll get through this. Together." The guilt gnawed at him relentlessly. He was deceiving this incredible woman, subjecting her to hardship and worry, all because of his own insecurity. Her unwavering loyalty wasn't a relief. It was becoming an agony, highlighting the shabbiness of his own actions. Was her love truly this unconditional? He had to be sure. He started subtly testing her. "Clara," he sighed one evening, rubbing his temples. "Maybe Sophie was right. Maybe you should go stay with your sister for a while. It's not fair to you, living like this because of my mistakes." She stopped stirring the simple soup she was making and looked at him, her expression clear and direct. "Don't be ridiculous, Nathaniel. My place is here with my husband. For better or for worse, remember? This is the worse, I suppose. It doesn't change anything fundamental." Another night, sitting on the porch swing in the twilight, he pushed harder. "Don't you regret it, Clara? Sticking with a loser? Think of the life you had, the things you've given up." She reached out and took his hand, her calloused fingers surprisingly strong. Her eyes glistened in the dim light. "Nathaniel Pierce," she said softly but fiercely, "I didn't marry Pierce Enterprises. I didn't marry the mansion or the Bentley. I married you, the brilliant, driven, sometimes exasperating man I fell in love with 25 years ago. Did I enjoy the comfort? Of course. Did I appreciate the security? Yes. But those things were never the foundation. You are the foundation. Rich or poor, successful or struggling, you're my husband. That's all that matters." Her sincerity was a physical blow. He felt tears prick his eyes, turning away quickly so she wouldn't see. Later that night, lying beside her in the small, unfamiliar bed, he heard her murmur in her sleep, a soft, troubled sound. "Don't worry, Nathaniel. I won't leave. Always here." He couldn't bear the deception any longer. Her love, proven beyond any doubt, made his test feel cruel and unnecessary. He had his answer. Clara's heart was pure gold, untarnished by wealth or its absence. He had subjected her to this ordeal for nothing, wounding the most loyal person in his life. The test was over. It was time for the truth. Nathaniel decided the charade had gone on long enough, precisely 1 month to the day since they'd moved into the bungalow. The emotional cost of deceiving Clara, of witnessing her quiet sacrifices and unwavering love while he maintained his lie, had become unbearable. He had the answer he sought, laid bare with painful clarity. His children valued his wealth above his presence. His wife valued him above all else. He needed to confess, to apologize, to somehow begin making amends, especially to Clara. He also knew he had to confront James and Sophie, not out of vengeance, but because they needed to understand the consequences of their choices, the shallowness of the values they had embraced. He called them both, using his regular phone for the first time in weeks, the sound of his voice startling them. He kept the message brief and neutral, asking them to come to the bungalow that evening for an important family discussion. He could sense their reluctance, their suspicion. Perhaps they expected him to ask for money or burden them further with his failures. Nonetheless, curiosity, or perhaps a sliver of residual guilt, compelled them to agree. That evening, the small living room felt uncomfortably crowded. James stood awkwardly near the door, dressed in borrowed finery, his expression sullen and impatient. Sophie sat perched on the edge of the worn armchair, nervously smoothing her expensive skirt, avoiding eye contact, Mark presumably waiting outside in his car. Clara sat on the sofa beside Nathaniel, her hands clasped in her lap, sensing the tension, her brow furrowed with concern. Nathaniel remained seated for a moment, gathering his thoughts, still wearing the simple, worn clothes that had become his uniform. He looked at his children, then at his wife. "I asked you here," he began, his voice quiet but carrying weight, because there's something you all need to know." He recounted the past month, his voice devoid of emotion, initially a factual retelling. "When I told you I'd lost everything, you reacted differently." "James," he looked directly at his son, "you expressed anger, blamed me, and left within a week, unable to face a life without luxury." James flushed, looking away. "Sophie," he turned to his daughter, "you complained, relied on your boyfriend's wealth, and ultimately chose his comfort over staying with your family during a crisis." Sophie bit her lip, tears welling in her eyes. "And Clara," he finally looked at his wife, his voice softening, thickening with emotion, "you stayed. You sold your treasures without a word of complaint. You took on work. You mended my clothes. You offered comfort and support, never blame. You reminded me what for better or for worse truly means." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle in the tense silence. Then he stood up. "The thing is," he said, his voice gaining strength, "there was no catastrophic investment. There was no bankruptcy." He slowly unbuttoned the cheap flannel shirt, pulling it off to reveal the fine-quality t-shirt underneath. He tossed the work shirt onto a chair. "I haven't lost a dime. Pierce Enterprises is stronger than ever. My personal fortune is entirely intact." James stared, his jaw slack. Sophie gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Clara looked utterly bewildered, confusion warring with dawning understanding in her eyes. "It was a test," Nathaniel stated baldly. "A deception. I needed to know. I needed to know who was with me for me, and who was just along for the ride, for the money. Now I know. You lied." James stammered, color flooding his face, shame, anger, disbelief warring within him. "You put us through this? For some kind of sick game?" "It wasn't a game, James," Nathaniel retorted, his voice hardening. "It was a search for truth. And the truth is, you and Sophie failed. Miserably. You valued comfort, status, and money over family, over loyalty, over love." "Dad, I'm sorry," Sophie sobbed, finally looking at him. "We were scared. We didn't know what to do. We made a mistake. We can fix this. Dad, please." James pleaded, taking a step forward. "We learned our lesson. We love you." Nathaniel held up a hand, silencing them. His expression was cold, weary. "Your apologies ring hollow now. You showed your true colors when you thought there was nothing left for you here. You chose money, or the lack of it, over your father, over your mother." He then turned fully towards Clara, his harsh expression melting away, replaced by profound regret and overwhelming love. He knelt before her on the worn rug, taking her calloused hands in his. Her eyes were wide, filled with tears, a complex mixture of hurt, shock, and relief swirling within them. "Clara," he said, his voice thick and unsteady. "My Clara, you are my true fortune, my North Star. You stayed. You loved me when I pretended to have nothing. You proved your heart is the only asset that truly matters." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside wasn't a massive diamond like the one she'd sold, but a simple, elegant platinum band inset with a single, perfect sapphire, the color of her eyes. "I don't deserve you," he whispered, sliding the ring onto her finger. "But I promise to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of your love. Forgive me. Forgive me for doubting you, even for a second." Clara stared at the ring, then into his eyes, tears streaming down her face. She didn't speak, but slowly she squeezed his hands, a silent message passing between them. The beginning of understanding, the possibility of healing. The revelation was complete, the truth exposed, leaving the fractured family standing amidst the wreckage of lies, facing the long road towards rebuilding what had been broken. The return to their former life wasn't immediate or seamless. While the financial resources were instantly available again, the emotional landscape had been irrevocably altered. Nathaniel, deeply humbled and changed by the experience, found the ostentatious mansion suddenly felt cold and excessive. At Clara's quiet suggestion, they didn't return there immediately. Instead, they moved into a smaller, though still luxurious, home. Elegant but comfortable, a place that felt more like a sanctuary than a statement. They kept the bungalow, too, as a reminder. For James and Sophie, there was no swift return to their former privileges. Nathaniel stood firm. You want my forgiveness? Earn it. You want my respect? Show me you understand what truly matters. He didn't cut them off entirely. He ensured they had basic necessities, but the river of cash flow stopped. He insisted they find their own jobs, pay their own rent, live independently, and learn the value of a dollar earned through actual effort. James, stripped of his easy access to funds, initially floundered. His wealthy friends proved fickle once his victim status evaporated and his father's disgrace was revealed as a test he had failed. He eventually took a humbling job as a barista, the stark reality of budgeting and responsibility hitting him hard. Sophie's relationship with Mark dissolved quickly once her father's fortune was revealed to be intact, but her access to it was denied. Mark, it turned out, was more interested in her potential inheritance than her company. She found work as an assistant at a nonprofit, struggling to reconcile her ingrained desire for luxury with her new, modest reality. Their path was difficult, marked by resentment and struggle, but also, gradually, by glimmers of maturity. They started calling home more often, not asking for money, but for advice, tentatively rebuilding bridges with their parents, particularly Clara, whose quiet strength they were beginning, finally, to appreciate. Nathaniel maintained a cautious distance, watching, waiting for genuine change. Nathaniel, meanwhile, poured his energy into making amends to Clara and finding a new purpose beyond profit margins. He established the Clara's Heart Foundation, endowing it with hundreds of millions of dollars. Its mission, shaped by Clara's deep empathy and their recent experience, was to provide emergency relief and long-term support for families blindsided by sudden financial hardship, job loss, medical crises, unexpected disasters, helping them stay afloat and preserving family unity during times of intense stress. Clara, initially hesitant, soon embraced the role of director, pouring her heart into the foundation's work. She possessed a natural ability to connect with people, to understand their struggles, and her quiet determination made the foundation incredibly effective, a beacon of hope for many. Nathaniel found immense satisfaction in supporting her work, seeing his wealth used not for ostentation, but for genuine human connection and support. His relationship with Clara deepened, transforming into a partnership built on rediscovered trust and mutual respect. The ordeal, though painful, had stripped away pretense. He involved her more in his life, sought her counsel not just on personal matters, but sometimes even on business ethics, valuing her grounded perspective. He learned to appreciate the simple things again: quiet evenings together, shared meals, Clara's quiet presence beside him. The deception left a scar, but like a healed wound, it made their bond stronger in the broken places. He cherished her, not as an accessory to his success, but as the anchor of his life. Years passed. James eventually started his own small, self-funded business. Working tirelessly, his relationship with his parents slowly repairing based on newfound respect. Sophie found fulfillment in her nonprofit work, discovering a passion for helping others, and reconnected with her family on more genuine terms. They were still learning, still growing, but they were on the right path. One cool autumn evening, Nathaniel sat reading in the comfortable living room of their home. Clara sat opposite him, knitting needles clicking softly. She was making him a simple wool sweater, much like one she might have thrifted or made during their month in the bungalow. She finished a row, held it up, and smiled softly. "Almost done," she said. "Just like the old days, though hopefully warmer." She paused, her expression thoughtful. All those things, the mansion, the parties, they were nice, Nathaniel. But honestly, I just want you to be happy. Truly happy. Nathaniel put down his book, his eyes stinging unexpectedly. He went to her, kneeling beside her chair, taking her hands, still capable, though no longer rough, in his. He looked at the simple sweater, at her loving face, and the truth resonated deep within his soul. "Clara," he said, his voice thick with emotion, tears tracing paths down his cheeks. "You gave me more than happiness. You gave me reality. You showed me what endures when everything else falls away. You gave me the world, Clara, a love that no money, no empire, no earthly success can ever buy." He hugged her tightly, the simple wool scratching softly against his cheek, feeling the steady beat of her heart against his. The billionaire who staged a test to find loyalty discovered something far more profound. He learned that true wealth wasn't measured in stock portfolios or corporate assets, but in the unwavering strength and unconditional love residing within Clara's heart. A treasure he had almost failed to recognize, a gift that would forever bring tears of gratitude to his eyes.